So through the eyes of the children, it is a story. It's my personal story. I had a parent who was a drug addict, and I recognized some of the pain that I had as a child and how it was grown into my adulthood. So I decided that I wanted to tell my story to release some of this energy and then create a space that allow other people to do the same thing. So the whole purpose of the film is to talk about that experience for the kids who witnessed their parents being drug addicts, who had to move around a lot and just deal with a lot of different issues that a child shouldn't have to deal with. So
What are these
yeah.
feelings that you mentioned? You mentioned feelings earlier. You know, just growing up in that environment. Please delve into that a little bit. You know.
Okay. So basically, when I'm talking about feelings, growing up with when you have a parent who's on drugs. In my situation, I had one parent who was on drugs and the other parent wasn't. And the other parent had to hold down the household primarily, while the person who was on drugs lived the street life. So the feelings you have, you feel isolated, alone, you get angry, you do not feel as loved. And a lot of times that results in bad behavior because you're trying to find a space for yourself because you don't have a space in your home.
So how'd you get from that to this point now where you're able to reflect, self-reflect, and also reflect on that experience? What happened?
Well, for me personally, I've always had a relationship with God. So God is really was my connection to understanding and finding my inner peace. And then beyond that, I'm an artist, so I sing as well. So I will always praise, and then I had opportunities that came about as far as I started playing the piano when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
I'll tell people that really saved my life because it gave me a different perspective of what life could be like.
Right.
So those opportunities allowed me to be able to be in this space now.
That's wonderful. Wow. For those in the audience, the few that we have, let's give Naeemah a hand for that journey. Not often that a lot of people get to make it out. It shouldn't be the exception at all. And that's part of the reason why you made this film. Can you talk a little bit about the reception that the film has gotten? What are people saying about it from what you've heard? What are your friends and your family telling you about it?
So I had a couple of screenings and different events. I did a screening like last week to do like an evaluation of the film. So a lot of people in the midst of our discussion was talking about the issue still being prevalent because the families are still broken. So, and then the people who experienced it, they felt the need to be able to express themselves. I found it very interesting when I started talking about it to other people that had the same situation or even worse. They were willing to open up to me easily.
Gotcha.
And it's a lot of shame to those stories because people are really, sometimes, you have an act, you put up a tough voice. So the fact that I'm talking about it in a vulnerable space allows people to be open to that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't want to revisit that time.
Then I don't, because a lot of like a close friend of mine, she lost her mom, and a couple other people lost their parents due to the drug life, and and it's a fear.
Right.
That you're going to end up being like this person, or you might just people will be ashamed of you or try to hurt your feelings because of that. So you have to learn to grow with it. So that's the whole goal.
And making the film was part of growing with it for you.
For me personally, it was just taking that experience and saying that this is a part of my life, and I cannot push it away. Right. So I have to learn how to say it was hurting, it hurt me, but at the same time, it did not break me, and at the same time, we can still change our today.
It's perfect. Speaking of changing today, for children in those situations, you seem to build, great networks, with people who have been in those similar situations. Like you said earlier, you open up to them, they open up to you. Let's expand that, man. How do you, if you could expand that and envision, just, in a way uniting children who have been in those situations, man, how would you do it if you?
Well, the idea that I have is the way they have the movie set up is like everybody has their own individual documentary.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I want to do with it is to allow people to have the same people that's in the movie to have that space. So if I'm doing an event, they can go out there and be a speaker. You know, they can talk about their story, how they overcame. And then give some wisdom and some wise tools of how to live in that life and not be overwhelmed. So the goal is just to make a bridge of connection,
Right.
and then allow people to really see see themselves, see the potential of themselves. Because a lot of times when you have those type of experiences, sometimes, not all the time, you know, you don't really see yourself
Right.
because you're just so focused on what's necessary because that's the way you have to live your life. So it's to allow them to really see their strengths. And so the goal would be to allow these people to have these similar experiences that I'm doing now, and then they can go around and teach people how to make it out of a situation that might have been very difficult, or can build like workshops to build
Definitely,
skills.
definitely not the picture that we get uh, most of the time in today's music, unfortunately. You know, a lot of these songs you're talking about trap rap or turn up music, whatever else. A lot of euphemisms for, you know, cooking crack, selling stuff, man. Like a lot of math terms, you know, a lot of lingo with this. It's commercialized. It's glorified even. You know, our you can look back at songs from when hip hop first started.
Mm-hmm.
If no, when they were talking about it, they contextualized it. You know, it was more like storytelling. It was more like, okay, yes, I was doing it, but this happened. More like telling a story and just reporting, like
Right.
what hip hop purpose was. But
The
now,
experience.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, how do we get our musicians to understand the seriousness in that? You know, the seriousness of that. To understand that there are people who were affected by that. You know, granted, you know, regardless of where you think it came from, if it came from this entity or wherever, just the entire market, from men getting locked up for selling drugs to people getting addicted to drugs and family breaking up. How do we get our people to stop celebrating this, to stop including it, you know, in or is it possible at all? Just given, you know, the commercialization of rap today.
What it is, they have to, because a lot of those, some of them, they are aware. Because it's all about, like I said, you grow up in different environments, you have a mind state of hustling. So getting it whatever way you got to get it. So whatever you have to do to get there, you're going to do it. So it's about really looking at yourselves and them seeing themselves and recognizing that the person that's standing right beside me is the same person that's with me. So basically, we are connected. And so my actions is a reflection of your actions. And so the hope in that is to basically help them to, I would say, stop being afraid
Right.
of changing the message because of what sells.
Right.
And then people who are watching it to recognize that it's not cool.
But
So
can you
to
say
explore
that in today's society? You know, we pretty capitalistic, man. You know, you're trying to make the most money. Can that happen in this everything? So, is it possible? You know, well, we do have a few gems. We have, you know, people say Kendrick, they say J. Cole. You know, is it possible? You know, will there always you know, I guess certain kinds of lyrics, whatever, will they ever be extinct or whatever?
Um, people, they're going to tell their stories the way they want to tell it. But the thing is, I don't think it will ever be extinct because it's a lot of money in it. And it's a bigger story behind the way that plays. It's not just the people, the rappers. It's the actual companies, too,
Right.
that's telling them that this is what you have to say in order to get the money that we want.
And a lot of these
So-
times, would you say these execs look like us?
No, I wouldn't say that the execs oftentimes look like us, but sometimes they do.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's about the money. So it's
Right.
about that green. So, but at the same time, the other portion is, okay, I'm trying to What was the other part you said? Because I can't remember everything that quick.
No, that's cool. I myself, I talk a lot, so
Oh, okay. I was like, what?
so it's just well, the second part of that is just again, I think you touched on a very important point. You know, just building community, and this often plays in our show, community, building community. You know, define building community for me if you can, just real
Okay.
quick.
Well, for me, I was, I listened to some of the other interview, and I was just thinking about, uh, how, some people just look at these kids as just lost children.
Right.
And in reality, they're just looking for somebody to help them see their potential. So in order to build community, first we have to change the way our community looks. And oftentimes we talk about like the alcohol places and what they call them liquor places, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't drink liquor, so I don't really know. Is it
Yeah.
liquor place?
Liquor stores.
So a
you
liquor
know,
store.
Yeah.
So they need to take that off the street and create put more libraries out there. It's the look of the community. It looks down. So
Right.
when you look and when you're in an area that looks down, then you're gonna start to act down, and then you have people in every corner that's drunk and doing crazy stuff. You
You know-
have to, in order to
You
build
know
more.
something pretty
Yeah.
funny about that? So for some reason, I guess the way economics works out around here, when stuff improves, we get pushed out.
Mhm.
So you see it everywhere. You know, it's sort of like Southeast is the last frontier of all of this. You know, because you see projects in St. East campus. They're talking about building WalMarts. You know now.
Yeah.
And it's always a topic, it's always a discussion, even, you know, both Mayor Gray's term and now even with Muriel Bowser's term, how do you balance this development with affordability,
Um,
and everything you're talking about
Yeah.
is good and gravy, but every time that happens, we don't get to enjoy it.
Right, and the reality is, I mean, it's a part of a plan. I
Yeah.
mean, it is not just, it's something that just happened. Like, people been getting moved around D.C., and you see Southeast, I mean, a lot of old people that I talk to, they say it used to be Chocolate City, but now it's not. And they're keep bashing our children and bashing the people, saying that we're bad, 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 because they only see certain images.
Right.
So, but the reality is, it's just a power struggle because people are still trying to claim themselves in their city. And then to address all of the change that's going on as far as the gentrification and everything like that, people need to start owning stuff again. We have to start taking control of what's going on and not allowing these people who are doing this to come in and say that something's wrong with you, instead of them coming in and saying, okay, we see that this building might be messed
Right.
up, but and then they come in and say this building's messed up, and you say, well, I've already tried to get it fixed, but you
Right.
haven't came yet.
Let me stop you. We ought to wrap up this interview, but
Okay.
before we do, we have to leave on a very, very reflective note. So you talk about just changing your attitude and not taking what they say about you to heart, right? Not not being above what they say you are, pretty much. You
Yeah.
know, just not if they say you can't do this, you're like, no, like that's what you said earlier,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So for the audience, please think back to that moment where you mentioned you had some uncertainties, you had feelings, that point where you just changed the dial and it was like, forget it, I'm just going to pursue singing, do filming and whatever else. Like, think of that exact moment if you can. Like, if just any moment where it just felt like, it was like, man, forget this, I'm just going to like take control of my life and just go.
Okay. When I sit back and I reflect on that moment, is after I've been out there and I've seen what's been going on, and then I've been to different places, and then I started recognizing to myself that it's nothing that you can't do. So, and I only have one life to live, so I might as well make the most out of it.
Yeah.
And I also, after having some reflection and talking to other people, I started recognizing some of the gifts that God had given and that was given to me, and people were experiencing this, and they said, "I'm connecting to you." So I said, "You know what? What I have inside of me is bigger than myself, so I can't stop. I just gotta move."
Naeemah Powell, everyone. Let's give her another hand, y'all, man. She did very well, man. You guys check out her movie, Through the Eyes of the Children. Naeemah, how can they check that out? Please tell us.
Well, I'm going to be hosting another screening.
Please promote.
Oh, yes. I did a screening at Bloom Bars like a week ago.
Okay.
And so right now I'm working out a couple of other locations. I might be doing one at an art center. And then I don't want to say the name of it just yet, only because it's not a definite thing yet.
Cool.
But I'm gonna post it on my page. I have a Facebook page called Through the Eyes of the Children, and all you have to do is look that up. And I created an Instagram page so I can do that too.
No
and
problem.
so that I can. The goal is to start a campaign and allow these voices to be heard.
Cool.
So you can go to Facebook, Through the Eyes of the Children, and Instagram, The Voice of the Children.
All right, perfect. Let's give her another hand, y'all. Naeemah Powell. Thank you, man.